Hi folks, I thought I'd do something a little different today and give you a bit of a tour around my rat room, because by doing that I can kind of talk about why things are in a certain way and why I do things for rats, why it suits them, and that might give you some ideas for your own areas that you keep your rats in. So let's start off my rat room and let's go for a quick walk outside and see how this works, because it's rather dark outside at the moment. So my rat room is actually outside of the house, so it's a converted garage actually, and a lot of people hear the word garage for rats and think, oh, well, they think something like the other half of the garage, which has all the usual junk in. But luckily we've got a double garage, and one half has been made into a separate room, which is perfect because it means I can set the environment for the rats. So I'm going to start off with the kind of more structural stuff that have really helped with it. So you can see here we've got a door. Now this is a stable door style thing, and what I've got on here, which you might be able to see great for the light, is fly screen. So it means come the warmer weather I can quite easily just hook this open and then the rats get a nice draft through. And we also have over here the second window. This one's currently got a grill on it because I leave that open basically all summer, so that kind of adds a bit of protection. There is a fly screen behind that as well, so I can get a nice draft going between those two windows. Get that cut because it's currently winter, so we really don't need the windows open. So next feature in the rat room, we have the floor. So this is very exciting. Painted concrete. The advantage of painted concrete is it's really easy to keep clean, and the rats can kick out all the rubbish they want, and they do regularly. And all I have to do is give it a sweep up, and if anything kind of more messy gets on there, I can just wipe it clean, or give it a bit of a scrub if it's really tough. It's a really hard wearing, durable surface. It is a bit cold, which is the downside, and it is very hard, so when I inevitably drop things, they can smash. But it works quite well. A good alternative to that is something like lino or kind of laminate floor or something like that. Carpet is a nightmare with rats. Not only is it a pig to keep clean, it's also a kind of trapper of dust, whereas this place I can just keep on top of the dust because I'm constantly sweeping up, and actually I do just sweep up because it's far quicker than even hoovering at the moment. So next feature on the kind of more structural side of my rat room is this. So I have my own sink and running water. This is a godsend because I'd have to trek across the outside to the house and to get water otherwise, and filling the water bottles would become a pain in the neck, so I'm really appreciative of that. And with the kind of good old British weather, it's inevitably raining when I'm trying to get across the house, so at least I can just run and only do it in one direction while I'm over here. The other thing it has is it's all sealed, so we've got kind of proper walls here rather than the usual kind of brick walls, which gives a bit of insulation. Less so for the winter though. I do want to keep the rats reasonably kind of cosy but not overly warm in the winter. It's more for the summer. Any kind of building that's not got a lot of insulation will just get hot really fast, and whilst in some countries this is a bigger issue than the UK, I can still see this rat room get up to over 30 in a really hot summer, which actually last summer was, and that's getting uncomfortably hot for the rats, particularly because my lot are used to kind of cooler weather. In winter, however, it also adds a bit of insulation, and one of the kind of bonus things that I also have in here is this little oil-filled radiator. Very handy. You can see it's set to about 14, so it keeps the rat room warm enough. A lot of people that also have kind of unheated rat rooms, they have a lot more rats than me. I don't have very many. I've got 7 girls at the moment, and that means that they don't really generate enough heat on their own to keep it at a reasonable temperature. I aim over winter to just above 10, but I let it drop gradually, and we're just having a cold snap at the moment, so I'm kind of just keeping an eye on it and keeping it warm. I should add that this room is not just the rat room. As you can see along there, it is also our utility room. It was meant to just be a utility room. It is now the rat room, and the utility bit is a little bit of extra. It also means I have access to a freezer in here, which is great for if I want to freeze any veg for the rats. So next bit, we'll have a bit of a walking tour around. So starting at the door, as I come in, what you can see here, actually probably the first thing you notice is the rosettes along the top there, and they go slightly around the wall now. I also have, quick nip forward, this rosette wall here. So this rosette wall is for my current rats, so any of my rats that are currently still with us feature on this wall, and I just stick every rosette they get up on there. I'm quite proud of them, they're good girls. The kind of rosette walls around the edge, these are my kind of hall of fame, so they're all my past rats, and what I will do when they pass, I will kind of go through the rosettes and pick out 2 or 3 that are particularly special for that rat. So you can see, let's go to some here. We've got a best in show here for a rat called Lovecraft Earth showing, so that's a rat of my kind of partner rattery Lovecraft. And we've got another one here for Isamu Fusion, she got best novice for me, and that kind of thing. And it's a lovely way to remember my rats by. One thing I also have on the subject of kind of remembering rats is I have along here, so these are all my championship certificates and longevity awards and that kind of thing for the rats I've had. I've got a few more to stick up on there at the moment, but I will get around to it. That's another way I quite like remembering them by. I don't keep every certificate up on there, I've got a few in a kind of folder as well, but I try and keep the kind of particularly special ones up there, which is nice. So what we also have down here is my stepladder. This use will come in obvious soon when I get round to the cage. And then I have what is my rat wardrobe. This is excellent storage. It's good old IKEA wardrobe. I think a lot of our house is IKEA. And I basically, it's a double wardrobe. I keep in here all the kind of assorted rat rubbish I've got, which is quite a lot. Down at the bottom here, I've got a bale of card bedding, some show tanks for going to shows, and then there is actually currently the North of England Rat Society agility setup. I store a bit for the club as well. And then we have 2 drawers which are chock full of hammocks and various other things. We've got water bottles, food bowls live in there. In there we have kind of assorted medical supplies that don't fit into my little medicine cabinet, so they're things like there's a heat pad in there, there's a stethoscope, that kind of thing. Up here, this is where I keep my stuff for my kitten packs, so I breed and then the babies that I home go with a little pack, so I keep lots of stuff there. And this is just an overflow for my kind of crafting, anything that's too big to fit in some of my other storage. So that's one half. Right. Next half, this is where I store most of my food and assorted other junk. So down here is basically bedding and substrate, so I've got a bale of kind of wood shavings in there. I've got hay, I've got a different kind of wood shaving. I should say, when I say wood shaving, these are kind of quite nice wood shavings. We've got Bed Max and Little Max there. They're both dust extracted, heat treated, so really low phenol content and great for absorption. We've also got Back to Nature, which I use in my litter trays, and a random bit of rat climbing equipment because it fit there. We've got some cocoa fibre stuff there and some blocks as well, which I use in my digging boxes. And then basically everything else around here is all ingredients for my rat mix. So at some point I will actually go through how I make my own mix, not just the simple mix that I went through recently, but you can see I have quite a lot of ingredients in there. And the top bit's one of my carriers and some other bits and pieces that just, again, they fit there. So that is my rat wardrobe. One thing I should show you actually, downside of having rats that are intelligent and like to get in things, I installed this lovely rat wardrobe, stored all my food in there, and immediately the rats worked out, let's get down here, that they could climb under here, which is where we have this lovely mesh blocker. There's various bits of mesh around my rat room. Rats are good at defeating rat proofing. That just stops them from getting underneath the door and into the food. They had a brilliant day once getting into a bag of Harrison's banana brunch, and they were quite fat afterwards and ate most of the banana chips, but they were happy rats. Now they are thwarted. So next pick in my rat room, we go to the rat cage. So I'll zoom out a bit so you can see it. So you can see along the side of the rat cage, I've added quite a lot of things that they can climb up and down. This is because my rats being my rats, they will climb to the very top of the cage, and then they're not always as good climbing down as they are climbing up, so it can be like reasonably me standing there trying to catch them and them getting all stressed, and the chance of them falling, I really don't want that to happen. So this creates a little route down, so you can see there they can just climb down and climb down this steps down there into this, which they love, which is a cat radiator bed. And then right down to their wine rack at the bottom, which they can get to the floor. This cushion is just for me to sit on when I'm on the floor. I sometimes sit on the bench, which you'll come around to later, but I quite often like to sit at their level. I find that they interact with me in a different way when I'm kind of like eye level with them. It's quite nice. So the cage. The cage is a little zoo Ventura. However, it's normally sold as a double unit, and I've tripled it because I like kind of a big cage. My girls only live in the bottom half of my main girl group, so this is the only rats I've got in here at the moment, so that's 7 girls. You can see, if we have a quick zoom in, we have the information about them. It probably won't quite appear right on the video, but I try and log down who's in the cage, what variety they are, what birth month they had, and then any kind of health notes or medication they might be on that I want people to be aware of, as long as what food they're on. The idea being that if something happens to me, I get rushed to a hospital. You know, something means that I can't see to the rats. Anybody can come in here and see immediately who's there, as long as they know a little bit about rats, how much to feed them, and any apparent problems. And it's just a bit of a backup. And it's the same if I get stuck out at work for some reason and I don't have a phone signal, my husband knows exactly what he's doing to feed them. So that's their cage. At some point I will go through the cage in more detail and explain what I've got in there and why. The girls are currently caged because otherwise they'd be climbing up my legs and I would not be managing to do this video. So the top cage is my other permanent cage. It's just 1 unit of the Ventura. I use this for if any rats are coming over to stay. I sometimes kind of take in some holiday kind of visitors from my kitten homes or from one of my friends. And sometimes it'll be housing like the kittens when once they're about 3 weeks old, they kind of grow up in that area. And it's also handy. I've got a couple of older rats and they occasionally need extra food, so I just put a bowl of food in there and them in there so they can kind of feed up a little bit, then move them back into the main group. So they spend like a few hours in there and that works really well for me. It's nice and easy. Right, so I should add on the top of the cage and on the top of the wardrobe, I store spare cages. So that base up there is a cocoa base. It's a great cage. I use it for the kittens. The actual metal of the cage is along the side of the cage here, along with a store of cardboard, which I use to kind of create a bit of security. My Alaskas, which are my birthing cages, and they're stored inside the cocoa base as well. So that's kind of making use of all the storage I've got, because I'm already taking over this room and I don't really want to take over the house too much as well. Next bit I've got in here is the rats have a cat tree. So I've modified this quite a bit to make it more rat proof. First thing I've done is, you can see all this kind of dots there. It was furry, so what I've done is covered it with a kind of PVC cloth, a white clean kind of vinyl cloth, and that works really well because rats wee on things a lot more than cats do. At least cats should do. So this is really wipe clean. So when they're marking, it doesn't matter, I can just give it a wipe clean really quickly. I've added a feather boa because they like pulling the feathers out and kind of climbing on it. They've also got ropes to climb up. The girls do climb up with these. This is actually an old ladder off a cage. I don't use the ladders or ramps in the cages very often, but this is because it's kind of like free floating. The girls love to jump on it and climb up it. It's been a bit of a win. So there's also, you can just see here, in part of it I've created a ball pool, so they'll go in there and they'll throw all the balls all over the floor, and then I'll have to go and pick them all up and put them back in, but they really enjoy making me chase them. And then we've got in the top section here, we've got what I call my interesting things. So I kind of collect bits and bobs that they can just have a chew, and I vary what's in there regularly. There's even like pine cones and all sorts, and it's just like different textures for them to play with. Continue up, they've got something that they can go in and out of the holes. This has got various ping pong balls and stuff they can chase. I think that's for kittens to kind of catch things through, but the rats can go inside it. And then we have a Halloween rat. I'm not really sure why, but I like it, so it's there for my sake rather than theirs. Next bit we have here, this is my one of my cupboards where I keep quite a lot of the stuff in. But again, because the rat's free range in the room, the top is set up so they've got some more interesting things they can dig in. Feather wand, which they absolutely love playing with, on here, and like something they can hide into. And then a couple of the mini cages here. I use these as kind of hospital cages, or if I want to just feed one rat, I'll stick it in there with a bowl of kind of wet food and hope it eats it fairly quickly. It's just my kind of emergency cages, and I can also, in an emergency, I've always got a cage set up, grab them out of there, stick them in there and get out of the house fast, and they'll have kind of water. So inside the cupboard, this is kind of more of my regular use stuff. So this side we've got their food. You may recognise this as the simple mix that I made not so long ago. We also have in this bit, these are all my kind of hanging stuff and bulldog clips and bottle springs. So these are all kind of the useful bits and bobs that I use to kind of stick my cage together. We have a box full of different kinds of wet food and some soakable kind of kitten friendly mixes there. So that's all used as occasional meals for the rats. And then this has just a load of junk in it. It's quite useful junk. There's a carrier in there and some a kind of pop-up tent for trying to take photos of them. They're all very blurry anyway, but I can try. Then this bit is, if you ever see me filming with a stationary camera, I've tied it with bits of wire to my nice little lights. At some point I might go for a more sophisticated setup, but this is still quite new to me, so we'll see how it goes. But what I also do is when I have does that are kind of imminent for giving birth, I have webcams on there, so I can watch them from work and get just stressed at work rather than just stressed at home. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It means you see a lot more of what happens in the kind of lead up to birth, the labour and so on. And you can also get some good news when you're not that close to home, so it's lovely. Next bit, so when I have litters, I have cages set up on here. I'm sure when I next do have litters, I'll do a video to kind of show you how the setup works. But yeah, I'll have kind of 2 or 3, maybe even 4 Alaskas set up on there. They're my birthing cage of choice. And then over to this bit, we have various supplements up on here. So because I feed a straight space diet normally, the rats need some extra kind of vitamins and minerals, so they kind of sit on there which go regularly in the water. I also have some supplements that I use regularly for old rats, so like a Pactine Senior Aid, that kind of stuff, that's on there as well. And anything that's kind of I like to have at hand and very useful. We have various bits along the top, along with my prized rat skeleton that one of my friends got me that I absolutely love. But mostly it's just kind of like stuff for me up there because it's well out of the reach of the rats. And then we have a kettle, very useful because I don't have warm water in here. I literally only have cold water. So I use the kettle when I've got to wash the rats and tails for a show. I boil a bit of water up and then kind of add a lot of cold. Or if I fancy a cup of tea, that's always very useful for that. Or I'm trying to soak an abscess or something, so... and then we have treats. Now I don't give an awful lot of treats. I'm probably a bit mean for the rats, but they don't really mind that much. But I've got like a little tub which has lots of small treats in, so I use those for training. I tend to, my principle with treats is they don't need them, so and they can be unhealthy, but let's make them as healthy as possible and make them actually help them rather than potentially make them fat and unhealthy. So like I've got some glucosamine treats there which I use for oldies. I've got some, this is kind of a liver treat, so I break bits of that off. Liver's great in copper content, which is also healthy for them. I've got some salmon treats there which are kind of higher protein, so better for the youngsters, and I'll alternate that kind of style, so I'll have kind of youngster aimed treats, oldie aimed treats, and then kind of vitamin boosting treats, and they love that, and that works really well. So next bit, we have my bench seats, so I'll sometimes sit on here on free range. I'll quite regularly sit on here when I'm filming something because it's the comfiest part of the rat room. But what it also is, which I love, is it's my storage for all my kind of cage setup junk, so it actually holds a remarkable amount of stuff. I wouldn't really manage very well without that storage because it also holds very awkwardly shaped stuff too, which is appreciated. Again, I've covered it with this kind of vinyl cloth, which means I can wipe it down easily without having to kind of strip it off and kind of stick it through the washing machine often. And the cushions are there just for my benefit. Then we have this bit here, which I record my rats' weights on. I record these monthly. Some of that's just to kind of keep an eye and check whether there's kind of like a general decline, because rats will fluctuate in weight by a fair bit quite often anyway, just down to conditions and hydration levels and such. I'll always weigh the same time of day every month when I weigh, and it just gives me an idea. If I've got like a regular loss, then I know that I probably need to keep an eye on this. There's probably something going on, investigate a little bit more. If I've got a regular gain and they're not growing, it might be that they're getting a little bit kind of too much of their share of food, so I have to think about things on that. I judge a lot by feel as well, but I like to have the numbers as kind of like a backup. And it's also really useful because I share these with my kitten homes so that they can see if their kittens are growing at a reasonable weight. They're still going to weigh slightly different than their siblings with me, probably, because I'll tend to keep them more kind of solid rats, and they might get the lighter weight rats, just from, because I want to breed from the kind of most substantial kind of fit rats that I can. But it helps them keeping track that their gains a similar amount and their rats aren't falling wildly behind, so it works quite well. Behind this, I'm really proud of this. I made it out of cardboard and duct tape. This was where the fuse box lives. In fact, it still lives there. You can just see kind of a caution warning sign there. But this is all easy to pull out, by the way, so I've not kind of restricted all access to the fuse box. It's basically my medicine cabinet, so I store various meds there. I'm quite lucky. My vet is quite happy to give me extra on a lot of meds, so I've got stuff in because she knows that I'm kind of very capable of dosing it myself and knowing when to give it. But some of the stuff in there is also stuff that anybody can get hold of, like Harcomycin that's useful to have in, bandages, that kind of thing. I'll go through at some point what's useful to have in a kind of first aid box, but that gives you a feel. And it's there because it's handy. I used to have it in a box in the wardrobe, and every time I kind of had a sick rat, it'd be like, oh my God, I'm pulling out all these kind of bags and boxes and everything's not where it should have been and I can't get hold of it easily. Whereas this one, I just lift it up, have a look through, and I can see what meds I've got in and whether I need to kind of find something different quickly if the rat's kind of an urgent case. So we're now back to the door, so that's giving you a bit of a look around my rat room. I don't think there's much else to mention other than I have nice bright lights here that helps me see the rats, which sounds a bit kind of silly, but because I kind of do show the rats and I'm interested in that side of things, it'll help me look at what condition they're in a lot more. They don't really need this bright light. In fact, they're probably happier without it, but it kind of helps me with that. But yes, I could show you my last little bit of last two bits of rat proofing, which I've done for kittens. So as I mentioned, I have my kitten cages on here. Once the kittens move up into the bigger cage, which is normally the top part of that Ventura or the Coco or both, I will then use this work surface as a kitten free ranging area because it's a bit more, like I'd lose them on the floor very easily. It's far too big a space to start off rats with. This is ideal, other than I have to watch them because they're prone to falling off at first because they don't understand there's no kind of limit. So I sometimes hitch up a bit of a cardboard barrier to give me a few seconds to kind of grab them before they jump. So this works quite well. But what I was finding was the reason we have these, which are just kind of not kitchen roll, kind of wrapping paper roll cardboard tubes here, was they could get underneath there and on the top of the washing machine and tumble dryer, which was a pain. Another one that I had was a kitten did manage to make it to the floor. Some always do, however careful I am. And he went, well, he actually went under this one, darted straight under there, and I had to spend about, must have been about 10-15 minutes on my kind of lying on the floor with various bits of food, tempting him out, tried to getting his mum to walk past. An adult rat can't get under there. A 3.5-week-old kitten can, apparently. He wasn't like scared or anything. He was just really happy because what inevitably happens is various bits of food fall under there. So he had a nice little meal, quite contentedly bumbling around there, eating all the food. I did get him out, but now I keep wire mesh under there. And it's something that you do end up thinking about a lot when you've got rats free ranging in an area. How can you make it safe for them? How can you block off any kind of awkward access? But it does work really well. So that's the rat room. That's kind of my sanctuary, I suppose. I quite often come here and spend a bit of time just sitting with the rats, or even just sitting and listening to them. It's lovely to listen to them eat. They're kind of very therapeutic. But it suits me very well, and it's particularly good because there isn't a lot of fabric. So one of the reasons why it's out here is we don't have to make it human habitable, or human comfortable, I should say. It's perfectly habitable in here. Instead, I can focus on the rat's needs, so I can keep it a bit cooler. I can keep it kind of without a lot of fabric around. They don't mind a bit of kind of the washing machine tumble dryer noise. That's quite a good way of familiarising themselves with various things. So it works quite well for them, and the temperature is quite important. If they're in the house, there's no way I'd be able to let it. It's currently 15.9, but the washing machine's been going for a bit. That'd be a bit cool for me in the house, but they're in their element, and they kind of adapt better to the cold weather than they do to the kind of warm. So it suits them. You see fewer respiratory problems in rats that are kept in kind of cooler, less dusty environments. So it's brilliant. The other thing is it's great because, I'll be honest, the rats are messy. Even though I've got deep trays and kind of there's a lid on my digging box and everything, just by nature of them loving to dig and loving to do things and destroy things, mess gets around. I've got a little, you can probably see it just down there. I've got a doormat. That isn't actually to stop me tracking stuff into the rat room, apart from when it's a bit wet outside. It's to stop me tracking stuff out of the rat room, because I inevitably get kind of wood shavings on my slippers and so on. When I had the rat room in the house, it was a lot messier. And my husband's more house proud than I am, so it bothered him. So this works really well. So they get their own environment and we kind of keep most of the mess in the rat room in theory. But yes, it's an ideal kind of area for them, and I love it as well. So welcome to my rat room.